Hi everybody, this is Mr. Pagliuco of Pagliuco Enterprises International, presenting the 7 perspectives of psychology. So, psychologists tend to explain human behavior in one of these 7 categories, and that doesn't mean that each of these perspectives is the only explanation for a particular behavior. They contribute to and complement one another to explain human behavior. So undoubtedly, all 7 are true to various degrees in particular situations, and no one perspective is necessarily always true. Nevertheless, you may find that one of these perspectives rings true more frequently for you and can be applied across the board rather than in one specific area or the other. So let's take a look at some of these perspectives. As we do this, I'm going to be using regular layman's terms and examples, and then we'll take a look at some more technical definitions. So the first is the evolutionary perspective, and of course the root behind this is evolution. And so this is going to be explaining human behavior from a sort of like a DNA perspective, in the sense that the way we are today is a product of the past. And so we might say that they might observe that males are aggressive. And they may say that aggressive nature was beneficial for hunting, for instance, and that females are nurturing and patient. And so that would be beneficial for, and we'll say patient. And these skills might have been more beneficial for gathering in the evolutionary scale. So, there's lots of observations you can make about human behavior, and then you can explain, well, what is the benefit of that? How did we end up this way? One common example is, phobias of snakes and spiders. I think that evolutionary psychologists would view these as logical, because they, snakes are sort of natural enemies of our primate ancestors. So, of course, there's plenty of phobias that don't seem to have an evolutionary explanation. Another criticism of the evolutionary perspective is that it's very good at explaining behavior that's currently being observed, but it is not very good at predicting future behavior according to evolutionary perspective. So you might say, oh, well, what is the effect of humans being on Facebook 14 hours a day? How is that going to influence them? And the evolutionary perspective will not be able, more times than not, they won't be able to predict the effect. So then you get to the question, well, also, maybe males aren't aggressive. That's the observation, but maybe they're being raised that way. Females perhaps aren't nurturing, but they're being raised that way. I mean, maybe males can be nurturing and maybe females can be aggressive. So, there's a lot of hindsight bias involved in the evolutionary perspective, but it does make many good points. In some cases, through experimentation, it can be proven. I think I had explained not so long ago, or maybe I will explain, the women smelling the men's t-shirts and ranking them undershirts that men had worn all day, and ranking them in order of attractiveness. And it turned out that the men who they liked the smell the best of somehow had compatible immune systems with the women. And so that would seem to suggest that they would produce a offspring that had these superior immune systems. So that's an evolutionary perspective, and that could actually be proven. And that's fun. Next perspective is the behavioral perspective. And this has to do with behavior. And these aren't the key words, but this is how I tend to think about them, is rewards and punishments. And so I tend to think this is really about associations. If you like the way somebody looks, that's a reward. You're rewarded for looking at them. And so therefore you're more likely to do that. If they're nice to you, that's a reward. You're more likely to repeat wanting to be around them. If you do something that gets you in a car accident, you're less likely to want to do that. And so we form associations with everything. I mean, why am I on this video right now? Because I suppose it makes me feel like a good teacher. Or maybe I think that it improves your learning, and then I look like a better teacher. So in that sense, my association with these videos, or maybe it's just plain fun to wear this microphone, which I am enjoying, and using this, and I also get to I get to write in a crayon now, and that's rewarding for me. Okay. Actually, the pen is more rewarding for me, and that's why I'm going with the pen. Next up is the psychodynamic perspective, which seems to focus on the unconscious. In other words, right now at this very moment, I'm doing a lot unconsciously. My heart is beating. I'm even writing right now unconsciously, in a sense. It's not like I'm deliberately controlling this real well in the way I'm holding the pen. And then I'm also thinking about what's coming up next, and I'm blinking. And of course, I'm feeling. And so you could say, a real large portion of our brain is active at different times. And a lot of it, if not most of it, the vast majority even at times we could say, is in the unconscious. And the psychodynamic perspective tends to focus on conflicts between our unconscious and our conscious selves. And many of these conflicts seem to have to do with childhood. Okay, so let's see. I'll try to think of an example. Undoubtedly, it won't be a very good one. Let's see. Because I want a partner and I feel dejected, I push that feeling of dejection onto, no. I feel hopeless at work and I'm being picked on, and so I go home and I beat my dog. Well, what's happening there is I'm taking the anger that I'm feeling from being helpless at work, and I'm transferring that onto the dog. And so in that sense, I might not know it. I don't go, boy, I feel hopeless at work, I'm going to go home and beat my dog. No, of course, but it's the result of an unconscious conflict. And the psychodynamic perspective is trying to tap into that. Okay, let's take a look at another one. Oh, no screen on this one. All right, the cognitive perspective. Now, when we talk about cognitive, immediately when I think about cognitive, I think about thinking. So our behavior is determined by how we think. Ta-da! That's almost the opposite in some respects of the previous. So I would suspect that there's that book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. They're going to take a look at how highly effective people think. And those people might be resilient. Perhaps they are, I don't know, egotistical. And so they have just this amazing ability to think that they're going to succeed when most normal people would say, I've got to end this thing. This isn't going anywhere. But they continue to beat their heads against the wall until finally they actually get through the wall. I don't know what the 7 habits of highly effective people are, but nevertheless, it's taking a look at how people think. Now, in this case, this would be a simple one, but you can also get more complex, such as how do we, well, memory. So how do we remember? And how do we interpret what we remember? So there's all sorts of thinking processes. Maybe therapy maybe therapy could change the way we think about certain events. So, a death in the family is obviously just very traumatic, and perhaps a therapist could change the way we think about that event and its impact on our lives, somehow turning it into something not so bleak. Okay, the sociocultural perspective is going to seek to explain behavior in social and outside influences, social influences and cultural influences. There's some fun examples of this. So, many things, many examples are culturally associated. We could talk about growing up. And I had a friend who said, people would act more responsible if we just gave them more responsibility. But instead, in the United States, the coming of age is a gradual approach. So you're 16 and you can drive a car. You're 18 and you can vote, and you're 21 and you can drink. So you can actually, or purchase alcohol rather. Well, both, I suppose. But you're 18 and you can get married and serve in the military, but you can't buy alcohol until you're 21. So this is a gradual approach in the United States, and we could take a look at the effect of that on our developmental behavior. As opposed to perhaps quinceañero in Mexico, where you're 15 and you get all sorts of responsibilities. Getting back, my friend thought that if we gave more, his theory was if we gave more responsibility to younger people, they would act more responsibly. I'm not so sure about that, but it lends itself to this. Another example is, while growing up is something that's very culturally dependent, smiling as an expression of happiness is ubiquitous. So, we can get a sense of what aspects of being human are attributable to our immediate surroundings, and what aspects of being human are attributable to actually being Homo sapiens. There's other examples, such as homosexuality. There are fascinating insights to be gained about homosexuality depending on the culture in which you're raised. Okay, next we have behavior genetics perspective, and this has a lot to do with nature and nurture, and to what extent human behavior is attributable to the environment in which we're raised, similar to sociocultural, but also what extent is attributable to nurture. So they might look at nature, genetics. They might look at personality, and what aspects of personality do you inherit, and to what extent can we mold personality? Inherit, and to what extent can we control it? And this really matters for parents, for instance, or for schools, or for employers at work as they're trying to get the most out of their employees. So this is going to focus a lot on genes. Okay, then we go down to, we have behavior genetics, and then we have the behavioral perspective, which for some reason I feel like we already did. 1, 2, 3. Oh yeah, we did behavioral 4, 5, 6. Okay, so let's see what we have left. Neuroscience. So we're getting rid of that, and neuroscience is biological, physiological, and chemical, or chemistry, but I'll say chemical, chemistrical, chemical, whoops, no extra either, approach to the brain. And so why are we depressed? Not because we inherited it. I'm going to use this extra space. We're not depressed because of our genes, and we're not depressed because it served an evolutionary purpose, which I have no idea what that would be. And we're not depressed because, what else do we have up here? Our culture is isolating. Even though we have Facebook, we all feel so isolated. Isolating. No, we're not depressed because our culture is isolating. That's not why we have so much. We're depressed because we have an excess of serotonin in our brains. So neuroscience can be brilliant because sometimes when people have trouble with their emotions, they perhaps can take a drug for some relief. But it's also in some respects depressing because we would like to think that how we live could ameliorate our pain. ADD perhaps could be an example, but I'm not certain, and I'm not going to go there right now. Okay, so next we take a look. We can do this little test. I advise you to do this on your own. So let's take a look. The perspectives of psychology, you can link to this. Maybe you want to pause this video right now, but we can do this together as well. I think you should do it alone. So let's take a look. The field of psychology uses 6 different theoretical perspectives to explore, I wonder why it says 6, to explore psychological events. So, evolutionary perspective. How the body and brain creates emotions, memories, and sensory experiences. How nature selects traits that promote the perpetuation of one's genes. That's reproduction. I like that with evolutionary perspective. I'm going to go with that. Yeah, I got it right. Behavioral perspective. Okay. So I'm thinking rewards and punishments here and associations. How the body creates emotions, memories, and sensory experiences. No. Number 3, how much our genes influence our environment? No. Genes and environment influence? No. Behavior springs from unconscious drives and conflicts? No. How we learn from observable responses? Possibly. How we encode, process, and store, retrieve information? How behavior and thinking vary across situations and cultures? So I'm going to go with observable responses. In other words, I think these terms, observable responses, is associations. Woohoo! I bet I'm going to get 100. Neuroscience. So I said this was physical, like biology and chemistry and so forth. So let's see. How the body and brain create emotions, memories, and sensory experiences. I think that could be it. I know it's not 2. How much our genes and environment, no. Unconsciousness, no. Observable responses, we did. How we encode, process, and retrieve information, no. And how behavior, they vary across. So it's going to have to be this first one. It must be how it biologically creates emotions, memories, and sensory experience. And I got it right. Sociocultural, I'm going right down how the behavior and thinking vary across situations and cultures. That was pretty easy. Psychodynamic, I told you the unconscious, conflict are the two key words, and we had that, how behavior springs from unconscious drives and conflicts. Cognitive perspective, we're getting down there now. We already did this one, we did this one. We didn't do this one, how genes and environment, but I don't think it's that. We already did this, we did that. How we encode, process, store, and retrieve information. I'm going with it. Behavior genetics, that was that nature-nurture type thing. How are genes and environment? Behavior, I feel, is not so much, but genes is obviously here with genetics. Okay, so it's weird the way it said the 6 perspectives when in the beginning, when here we have 7. So now let's go back to the presentation and you can do your final task at hand, which I may have a written assignment for you. So here we see a very poignant image from Vietnam. This is a very famous image, and many people attribute this as, when this was published, as the moment that America turned against the Vietnam War. Now there's more to this picture than there seems, of course, but boy, when America looked at this, they did not like what they saw. So what I would like you to do now is try to list the 7 perspectives of psychology. Oh boy, that must have been, I went 1, 2, 3, 6. That must have been the psychodynamic perspective because I let it slip out in that way. It's revealing something unconscious about my personality. So you're going to try to do this, list all 7. I already just gave you 1. And then you're going to try to explain this behavior using all of those perspectives. Okay, good luck with that. I hope this helped. Thank you, and I'll see you in class.